to deliver some notes, one of which reached a nun from a local convent, who then pleaded successfully with the German commandant for their release. They moved east on foot, away from the German army, toward the Russian army, and almost immediately fell victim to thieves who took what money and valuables they were carrying. In September, they found lodging in a village in return for work digging in the field. Years later, beyond the turmoil, he would remember it as a moment when he had stepped out of history. I rolled a cigarette and licked the paper, then a match in the little house of my hand. And why not a tinder box with flint? The wind was blowing. I sat by the road at noon, thinking and thinking. Beside me, potatoes. By early November, they headed south and east and reached the estate of friends in a village near Krakow, where they and other lodgers took refuge. In Krakow, relatively unscathed by the war, but an hour's drive from Auschwitz, and under Soviet control, what was left of Polish society was beginning to put itself back together. Milosz was able to join a newly formed writers' union, was able to participate in a poetry reading. The young Wisława Szymborska, another future Nobel laureate, was in the audience. In the early spring, he visited what remained of Warsaw with his friend, the novelist Jerzy Andrzejewski. See in Warsaw. This book begins with a poem Milosz wrote about the trip. That summer and fall, he was able to work on the poems he had written during the war and found time to apply for a diplomatic post in the new government. In November, he received an appointment to serve in the United States. In December, he flew to London, where, among other things, he had lunch with T.S. Eliot, whom he had translated. He received a book of his own poems of the war years just before he boarded the ship that would take him into a new life. Milosz arrived in New York on January 16th, 1946, 6 months after the end of the war in Europe, 4 months after the surrender of Japan. He was 35 years old. His employers at the consulate in Manhattan had arranged for him and his wife an apartment on the Upper West Side at 342 West 71st Street. The consulate was on Lexington and 67th on the east side, so his introduction to this new country must have been a walk across Central Park in the brisk winter air. It takes a while for the park to show up in the poems, and when it does, the scene is summer. Young men in uniform are sprawled on the lawn in the dark with their young women in their arms, watching an outdoor movie, and the flicker of the projector lights up the buildings along Fifth Avenue and evokes in him the memory of his last look at Warsaw as it burned. His first response to the United States, like that of many other visiting Europeans in this period, was at least a little defensive. This seems to have been especially so to those who had been removed from the ruin of European cities to the middle of Times Square. "Buildings this tall are nonsense," he wrote to a friend not long after his arrival, "and all the neon is a cheap gimmick." Part of the fascination of the poems of these years is watching his imagination simultaneously take on the extraordinary violence he had witnessed and the strange post-war United States that he was beginning to explore, while the tightening grip of the Soviet Union on Poland was slowly making his position in the Polish embassy untenable. The Polish scholar Alexander Fiut describes Milosz's situation this way. After all, the outstanding poet, the future author of The Captive Mind, decides to play in the United States the role of a diplomat of the People's Republic of Poland. This Polish citizen, after the experience of war, occupation, the imposition of a totalitarian system in his homeland, finds himself on the other end.